Hey guys, welcome back to the Venn Pod. My name's Alex, and next to me is.
Hi guys, it's Hannah.
So today, like you can see, we have another episode, but today we're actually presenting, can we call it like a part two Q&A situation? So on
Yeah.
Instagram, we asked you guys two questions and we got a wide variety of responses. So we think it's best to just keep it general, and we're going to be answering some of your questions. So stay tuned.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Let's jump in. Which one should we start with, Alex?
Let me look. And if we're looking on our phone, it's not that we're ignoring you. It's just that we're reading your questions because we care.
No shade, guys. No shade.
Okay. Um, so we asked questions regarding being a music major specifically, but we also got some questions just about being a musician. So I think the first one, because this is the Venn Duo podcast or Venn Pod, right? One question came from one of my studio mates, Henry, and he asks about branding, networking, and entrepreneurship, music business stuff. And I think it's a good question to kick things off because Hannah and I would call ourselves little marketers or trying to be with this Venn Duo thing. And I think just from our experience, we could talk about things we do to try and help with that, but then also some of our personal takes. So, Hannah, you got anything to say?
Well, I would advise everybody to make friends with somebody who already knows things about business. In this duo, that is Alex. For those of you that don't know, Alex is super, super smart, and she actually has a degree in business. So Alex is like our resident business professional. She knows a lot about networking. She knows a lot about branding and entrepreneurship. So I am really grateful that I have a partner in crime who is already really, really good at that. But I think together we have tried to build a brand that genuinely represents us. And I think that is where some people can kind of get into not necessarily trouble, but it can be kind of uncomfortable and awkward because, as we like scroll through social media, whether you're like on music social media or not, even if you're just like on TikTok, like you see these influencers all the time, people who have such strong like presences and such strong branding. And you're like, oh, I have to be that, or I have to be like them. When the reality is, no, you don't. Like your lifestyle, your life choices, the way you do what you do is your brand. So when you start to try and get outside of that and like play yourself off as something that you're not, or play your life off as something that it's not, then things can get weird, right? Because you aren't drawing from your true experiences. So I can say that Alex and I think we've done a pretty good job as Venn Duo. As what you see on our page is stuff that we are proud of, is stuff that we really believe in. That might sound funny whenever you see TikToks of us doing dances in our living room, but like that's also part of who we are. Like we're silly people, and I think that's a really valuable part of our brand, and that just helps us build a more genuine image for ourselves on social media, I feel. So I'm going to turn it over to our resident expert and our music business professional of this duo, but that's kind of my hot take on entrepreneurship and branding.
No, and honestly, I think the reason why it's so, I would call it easy working with Hannah is because we're very similar. Like prior to having Venn Duo, when it came to content and everything related to the both of us, it was on our personal pages. Like we were content with sharing the same content because we have similar styles and similar interests. And also like similar boundaries, I would say. Like we know what we're willing to post and what we're not willing to post types of situations. So in terms of branding and content specifically, just being with people or being yourself, like Hannah said, that have similar tastes, because it's very easy, like you said, like everything you said was so valid. So I'm like just going back to it. It's very easy to get caught up in the whole like, oh, I want to be like so and so. I want to post like so and so. But when you start doing that, it becomes tedious. It feels inconvenient making content because then it's like, well, what are they doing next? And it's like always, what are they doing? What are they doing? Versus like for me right now with my personal content, I post what I want. Like I had a whole series for our first concert series where I was just like, I was posting like outtakes of things that like people never see from a rehearsal. And I was including GIFs because I love GIFs. So it's just funny because it's little things like that that make you stand out if it's unique, especially if it's unique to you. But when it comes to branding, so Van Duo is our brand. The one thing that's important when creating a brand is consistency. Like for us, we're still growing, but I'm very proud of where we are. And it's coming up with a long term plan and just being realistic. So, Hannah and I have a thing where initially I feel like we were a little bit like, let's just throw out content, let's just throw out content. It became unattainable. It was during COVID, so it was possible, but it can't happen. With me being in grad school and with Hannah, you were still in your senior year at Messiah, it was just not possible to be making like 2 to 3 posts a week. Like, no. So we stopped that real quick. But now we do something really sustainable and consistent that allows our brand to still be relevant and active. So we have a schedule in place that works for us. So figuring out a schedule that works for you is very important, and a schedule that's realistic. So if that's having one project, music video project a month, that's it. If it's having two, good for you. For us, it's one because we have 3 types of content that we typically share. That's a podcast, that's a TikTok/reel, and also a music video type of situation. A recording, music video. Huh?
You're making us sound famous, Alex.
Like,
Like we're out
are
dancing.
we? We're singers? What? But yeah, I think in terms of branding, consistency plays a big part in that. For my personal content, I honestly do like once a week, but also I'm very, if I don't have anything, I'm not posting anything. Like I'm not gonna force a post type of situation. And even with Bandu, I feel like we're not that type of people. Like we don't try to post something just because we have to post something to be consistent. Like we have other things we could post. The next part was networking. I think
Yeah.
Hannah and I have similar connections in terms of like who we know just because we both went to Messiah, but now we're in 2 different schools. So we have different types, not different types, but different people we connect with. That plays a big part in our combined network. I almost called it branding in our combined networking because composers, for example, I know composers on my end. Like I knew Chris personally. Hannah did not know who Chris was, but because I knew Chris, network, we're now connected type of situation. Do you have anything on network before we move on?
Yeah, I would say a really good way. I have 2 things about networking. A really great way to network is just by showing up at conferences. So Alex and I, we love a good conference. We love to be there. We love the experience, but networking is where we are able to meet a lot of our internet friends in real life. And that's really valuable because, I mean, as great as social media is, it allows us to share what we're doing. It allows you to connect in an instant, but there's nothing quite like making an in-person connection. Those are so valuable. We were able to make an in-person connection with Kristen Denny Chambers at Low ICA, and she was so kind. She was so sweet to us. And she even gave us a piece of her music to play. And we actually have a duet by her coming out in a few weeks. But she let us know about those things. And then we got to meet her in person and say, oh, hey, thank you so much for that resource. We're really excited to share it. And just continuing that positive professional relationship with people that you might start online, but it really just helps it grow and solidify. And you get a better feel for other people in person than you do online. So I would say if you can afford it, whenever you can make it, even online conferences are a great way to network, just to like see people's names, like see who's showing up to these things, because I mean, you never know who you're going to run into, even if you're online at Kaleidoscope or something. I mean, like take a look at your Zoom room and be like, oh, this person's name, oh, they said that they did their master's here. Oh, well, I know that person. Maybe I should keep an eye out for them in relation to this school or something like that. And I would say with networking, like the object of networking is just to get to know other people and get to see what they're doing for the profession. You shouldn't approach networking like, oh, how can I climb the social ladder so that I can benefit? Because I think a lot of people view networking as, oh, I am looking for people who can do things for me. And that's a mistake because then you're not being a good member of the professional community. The whole point of like connecting with the professional community in a networking sense is so that we can all work together to make this thing that we love called clarinet thrive and better and more creative. And so I would just encourage you to like check yourself before you like reach out to somebody. But on the other hand, if you are, looking to connect with somebody in a positive way, then totally just reach out to them. There are people who I see on my like For You page, and I like click on their video, and if I think it's cool, I'll like go to their profile, like see what they're about, give them a follow. And if I see that that they know somebody who I know, I might even message them and be like, hey, I really like this video of yours. I know, for example, I know that we both know my friend Anthony because you know them from this festival and I know them from UNT. And so I think that sometimes people can be scared to reach out and make that connection. So if you're trying to connect with somebody in the right way, not to social climb, just to make a connection, totally do that on social media. Be kind, be positive, be uplifting. And then also get to those conferences, because honestly, that's a great place to make your connections.
And a big thing that you mentioned is the genuine factor. Like if you're in your mind thinking, "Oh, I want to be friends with Hannah because when Hannah gets famous, like I want to ask her to perform my work." Like if that's where your mind is taking you, then you should reevaluate like what is friendship, connections, and later on networking mean to you, because realistically speaking, like your friends are your network, your colleagues are your network. Like you being in college, that is your network. If you're using the resources and the people you have around you correctly, you should have a network already. Like the pairs in your class, the dancer in your class, the composer in your class, the theater major in your class, they are your network. And it's just being kind to those people without really thinking of like, oh, the later, like, what can I use them for situation? But it's just remembering, oh, hey, yeah, I had a class with so and so. Let me reach out to see if they're available to like write me a piece and I could like commission and pay them type of situation. Or, hey, I think I want to have like a ballet dancer in my performance. So let me see if so and so is available. That's networking. Like, it's not anything crazy. Like, it really isn't. And I think because people don't really talk about it like in a music lens that much, it's difficult. Like when you hear networking, for me, I hear career fairs.
Yeah, you're
Like that's what you think of, but you forget that your peers are your network, like at this present moment. So I think that's something very important to remember. In terms of entrepreneurship, like I feel like that's a little tricky because for us to talk about specifically, because when I think of entrepreneurship, I think of like a small business, and I don't think we're a business yet. So
we are not a business asterisk yet. That would be so cool someday if,
like we don't merch. So sorry.
yeah, no merch right now. I was just at TMEA and there was like, it was like everybody and their mother's dog was handing out stickers. I was like, that's it. Venn Duo needs stickers. So keep an eye out for the stickers, people. They're coming. But yeah, I feel like we are not totally qualified to talk about the entrepreneurship, but I think a big part of entrepreneurship are the mindsets that you adopt from networking well and from branding well. Like those are two, like if entrepreneurship is the thing that you're attaining to, branding and networking are like the two legs that kind of support that, right? And so I think that we're in a good place to start being entrepreneurs, Alex, but just personally, we're not there on our journey yet. And so hopefully we can get back to you on that one, Henry. So sorry.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to business, like, yes, it's something that people get a degree in. But at the same time, like for you personally, I think if this was advice to an individual, which it kind of is, but it's for everybody listening, I think when it comes to you specifically, just put yourself out there. Like we have social media at our disposal to where we can start building our brands. I tell people all the time, and they probably are so tired of me, but I'm like, for musicians, Instagram is like our digital portfolio now, low key. Like it kind of is. Like someone just reached out to me, like one of my past studio members who I didn't really go to school with, but like who actively follows me on Instagram, asked me to sub in for them for one of their rehearsals. And they've never heard me play like that much in person. So their reference for asking me to play B flat and E flat is Instagram. Like if you think about it, like that is where people go to see how you sound, like what you're worth at this point, as bad as that sound. But yeah, I think that's important to remember. So just put yourself out there, get it started.
Absolutely. Just remember that there are TikTokers out there who are 20 years old and are making millions off of doing their makeup in front of a camera. Like you are doing a very specialized skill, playing the clarinet. That is art. That is hard. That is hard work. And so I'm not saying that after your first video, Daria is going to be knocking down your DMs being like, hi, please be an artist. But like, just put yourself out there. You can do it. And I'm excited to see your content.
Yes. Okay. So what's the next question you have in mind, Hannah?
Let's do Ray Rostro, actually one of my studio mates, asked about practicing when feeling unmotivated.
Oh,
That's a good one because
we
the
have
unmotivated,
an episode on that.
we do have an episode on that. I think it's episode 2 of the Venn Pod. It's called What to Do When You Don't Want to Practice. And
Don't.
the short answer to that question, what should I do when I don't want to practice, is don't.
Mhm.
Hot take, but it's true. I think well, I don't think I believe it. I know I believe it, and I know Alex believes that too. But we can just talk about like the main things that we do that help us feel more motivated to practice. So, Alex, you wake up one morning, you're like, wow, I really don't want to practice today, but I know I have these things that I'm preparing for. What do you do?
Listen to the piece. I might listen and follow along in my part. I might pick up my clarinet, and I'll probably play Hate How I Sound, not be into it, put it back down. That's what's going to happen, like, honestly speaking. And as bad as that sounds, because it's such an unconventional response in the classical music community, like, it's real. Like, if you see someone in a different field like really feeling unmotivated, like really out of it, like are you gonna force them to do something? They're usually gonna go chill with their friends, but for us we feel this unnecessary pressure to just do no matter what, and even if it's gonna give you like a really poor like end product. So for me, I would probably just listen, follow with my score. Like that's my main thing I'd probably do. What about you?
Well, there, I was just gonna say, I was gonna agree with you. Yeah, and when you think about other professions, like a med school student who's like feeling burnt out from studying for hours and doesn't want to, like, doesn't feel like it, like they're not gonna like stare at their book. Probably they're gonna do something else, and then maybe they'll come back later and try and do some of it. But there are lots of things we can do apart from our instruments that aren't like actually practicing that can help our practicing, like score study. You can research about your piece. Ray, I know that Dr. Loveno makes us do our things to know about your piece, and she has this like big long list of like things that you should know about your piece, like when it was premiered, about the composer, about the edition of the piece, all that good stuff, so you can still be educating yourself on things that should inform your performance whenever you do feel motivated to practice. For me personally, whenever I, don't feel motivated to practice, my first question is always why. Because whenever I can go after the why I'm feeling unmotivated to practice, typically I like whenever I can address those things, typically then I am able to practice because I've addressed why. So a couple of reasons that, the big heavy hitters for me are normally number one, I'm not changing up my routine enough. So then I dread practicing because I'm like, here I go again. I'm going to do the same boring trill routine, the same boring bottom econ, the same boring scale routine, the same boring long tones. I friggin' hate long tones. I might even skip them. The same boring, you name it. I don't change up my routine enough. So that's usually one reason that I'm not motivated to practice. So I need to change my routine, or I need to change the way I'm practicing. Sometimes we can get into a rut where we just become like metronome robots and we just like ching, 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 ching. And then we play things again and again until it's like clean, but there's not a lot of expression or interest or thought behind it. So first, examine your routine. Do I need to shake things up? Do I need to practice in a different order today? Do I need to practice in a new location today? And then check out the way that you're practicing. Do you need to change up your plan of attack? Do you need to change up your repertoire? And that's actually the other reason why I dread practicing. If I find myself feeling unmotivated, it's because I don't have music that I'm passionate about. So as students, sometimes we get to choose the music that we're working on, but a lot of times we just get handed music. A lot of times in our ensembles, we don't get a say in what we play, but we have to play it. So in that situation, it's kind of hard because our hands are tied. But if you don't have music that you're super passionate about, maybe that's a conversation that you can have with your teacher, that you would like some new rep, that you would like some different rep, or maybe you just need to find some rep that you can play just for you. And actually for me, oftentimes that's our Venn duo stuff. Our Venn duo stuff is really fun for me. And I can usually look forward to that and not have to dread playing it because it's something that we're both interested in, we're both really passionate about, we're excited about. And so I kind of like incentivize myself. I'm like, okay, if I can get this part of the Bartok super clean at this metronome marking, then I'm going to take a look at the stuff for Venn Duo that I'm really excited about. So yeah, that would be my advice. I mean, other than my primary advice is if you don't feel like practicing, don't, because I think that we need to permeate the culture of like, I think we need to like totally nix the idea that we just have to push through all the time. I don't think that's valid. And I don't think that's healthy. So I definitely think that resting would be the first line of defense. But if it just becomes like a perpetual thing, like I don't want to practice day after day after day after day, then maybe examine those two things. Do you need new rep? Do you need a new process? I guess it's three things. Do you need new rep? Do you need a new process? And do you need new habits? So that would be my advice on that one.
I think something you said that stuck out with me was the rep choice. Remind me that I said that if I forget that point, because I want to say something too. Something that I do whenever I don't feel like practicing, like for you, it's asking why, which I eventually do. Like if it's been like you said, 3, 4 days that I like no motivation to touch my clarinet, which is abnormal. Like that's the first signs of, oh shoot, I might be burnt out. So that's
Yeah.
when I start asking why. But before that, like if it's one day, like I usually have a day of the week where I just don't practice. Like I probably have ensemble, but I'm not touching my solo rep. Like it's not gonna happen. I need a day off. So for me, a lot of times I feel the guilt. Like I said, it's that pressure from the classical upbringing where it's like you have to practice 40 hours a day situation, right? But sometimes for me, it makes me feel better to like give myself the okay. So it's being like, no, you practiced like really well yesterday. And the day before that, you accomplished a lot. Like if you look at your timeline, you're okay. And it's just telling myself that I'm okay. Like I can take this day off and everything will be fine in the world. Like that honestly takes a lot of weight off of my shoulders. But back to the rep thing, because I actually remembered so one of my friends were getting on my case because I needed a rep, not a rep, I needed a piece for my recital rep. And I was being really picky, but I'm picky with all the rep I choose. And a lot of the times, like my friend responded to one of my messages every time I was like, maybe. They were like, honestly, maybe I make too quick of decisions. This was my friend. They were like, maybe I make too quick of decisions because that's what gets so burnt out and tired with my repertoire. And I responded, that's why I don't. But it's because I always play something that I like. Like if I pick up my solo rep right now, I'm gonna have so much fun. Versus if I were to pick up my ensemble rep, like you said, that we don't have a choice in picking. So that's why rep choice is so important. And it was someone else in my studio who reached out to me and they were like expressing how they're not passionate about the repertoire. They were picking XYZ and they're a graduate student. And I think our professors were still picking repertoire for them. But that's a weird situation for me because personally, I've been picking my repertoire ever since I was a freshman in undergrad. Like I've always had a passion for every single piece that I've played. Like, rarely have I gone to my professors and been like, do you have any rap choices for me? Usually, I'm the one presenting them with the options, being like, here's the program I want to do, and here are the 20 backups that I have listed in case I can't do one of them, which helped me a lot with this current repertoire I'm working with. But the reason why it's so weird, and like I said, that's abnormal for a graduate student to still be given repertoire, is because this particular student is going through like a bit of a change and a little bit of a burnt out situation and a unmotivated situation. So I told them, someone else picking repertoire for you is not going to make you feel better. Like you're playing pieces you don't want to play. And then now you're angry that you have to play it and the professors won't let you switch. But why won't the professors let you switch? Because you don't have any choices to present to them. So you're kind of in a lose-lose situation that you kind of are in and you have to take yourself out of. Like this is no one else's responsibility but your own. Like if you had a piece to present to your professors and you worked it up to replace the current piece you're working on, I don't know a professor that would actually be like, no, you can't do it. Like I actually do not, because professors are usually really impressed if you could present them with a piece that you've been working on behind closed doors and like really worked hard on and they could hear it. Like I don't, and that's the one thing that like really grinds my gears. Like
Really gets her going.
little like that. It's like you yourself have to do the work you have to do the work. Like, not everything is up to the professors. Like, professors are there to guide you, but not to lead you and have your hand the entire journey of graduate school. Like, you're in graduate school. Even when you're an undergrad, it's bizarre to me that seniors aren't picking their own repertoire. Like, I know I was weird in the sense where I was picking mine from freshman year, but it's because I was mostly realistic with my level of playing. Like, if a professor is picking the repertoire for you, there's usually two reasons. You don't know where you realistically stand in terms of what you could play, and two, you don't have any suggestions. And it's usually the second one. So,
And if you
repertoire
are,
is important.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Well, I was just going to say, I totally agree with everything you just said. A lot of times when we lose motivation, it's because we lose direction and we stop like having those goals for ourselves. And so then it's really easy to be like, well, why should I practice if I don't have anything that I'm working towards, you know? And even if you are an undergrad student and you're in that situation where rep is still being chosen for you because you're still a developing player, you're still getting to know the body of literature for the clarinet, I'm sure that you have a piece that you have always dreamed of playing. For me, I walked into my undergrad really, really, really wanting to play the Copland Concerto. And I told my undergrad teacher this, and she was like, oh, sweet Hannah, you will not play the Copland Concerto because you're not ready for it. But when I think about the Copland Concerto, what's hard about it? Why am I not ready for it? Well, there's crazy articulation. You got to be able to go ham on the articulation. There's really sensitive, really, really controlled upper altissimo stuff. You have to be really great at playing quiet. You have to be able to do some extended technique like glisses and bending pitches. You got to be able to play in a very, very pronounced jazz style. You got to be able to be super independent. You got to be able to have a conversation basically with your pianist through your instrument. Like, it's not a piece where they're going to help you because you're both doing your own thing so intensely. So like when I think about those six things, like, okay, so in undergrad, I wasn't ready to do all six of those things by myself. So what can I do to better prepare myself to play that in the future? Well, I know in my undergrad, I worked really hard on my articulation. I know in my undergrad, I worked really hard on those extended techniques and stuff. I know in my undergrad, I played a lot of pieces where I slowly gained independence from my pianist, where my pianist wasn't going to help me with boom chucking, where I was able to, make music apart from them. So, I mean, don't lose sight, like Alex was saying, don't lose sight of like having goals and having like pieces for yourself. And then if you're told that you're not ready to play those pieces, or if you know in your heart that you're not ready to play those pieces, then work on the things that are going to be able to make you play those pieces. And then that's what you do in your practice. So don't be discouraged by, oh, I can't play the Nielsen concerto right now. Well, no, you can't play the Nielsen concerto right now. But what can you do now to make yourself ready to play the Nielsen concerto in the future?
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of goes into the general topic of like questions to ask music majors, being us. But I think this wasn't a question, but something that this really brought to my mind is the whole another pressure from our peers, which is, oh, you haven't played Copeland. Oh, you haven't played Nielsen. I, Alexandra Shea, a first year doctorate student, have never played those. And I'm very proud to say that because I think a lot of people put this weird pressure on checkbox. Like, you could have a trash performance, but you could still brag about the fact that you performed a piece. Like, huh? I'm confused. But okay. But that just like, it's something that I think personally sets me apart is that I don't feel that pressure. Like, you can't pressure me to feel whatever you're trying to make me feel. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, you could brag about XYZ, ABC, but I'm here for me. I'm not here to make you happy or to please your box list. And neither should any of y'all listening. Like, your repertoire is your repertoire. Like, a lot of the times, the pieces I've played are the pieces that are rarely played. And that's intentional on my end. I hate playing overly used repertoire. Like, it's overused. It gotta go. It gotta go. And that's just my personal style. And my professors know that. Like, most of the time I go to them with my proposed recital list and they're like, what's that? Or who's that? Spell that name again? Because they've never heard it. And I love that. But there's other people, and it's totally fine if you are a checklist person, that y'all are checklist people. Like, y'all want to check some boxes, and that's totally fine. We just have two different things, but you should never be imposing one on the other. Never.
I totally agree with that. And There's a lot of that here at UNT, I feel. And I think that there's a place for that. So like, for example, I never want to play a Weber on another recital again in my entire life. Not ever. I've heard the Weber concertos 5 too many times this year. Over it. Hashtag over it. Do I understand the importance that Weber has in the clarinet repertoire? Absolutely. Do I respect his compositions? Absolutely. Do I see the value in learning maybe one of them? Yes. But do I feel like less of a musician because I have never performed either of the concertos? No. You can learn everything you need to know about Weber by playing concertino. Hot take. But like, I mean, yes, you should know about those things, but you don't have to know like every nook and cranny of the concerto, because I know enough about Weber that if I'm coaching a student on Weber, I can tell them how to play Weber. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, knowing about it is important. Knowing why it's important in the body of clarinet repertoire, it's important. Is it important that you played it for your jury? No. Are you still going to pass grad school having never performed the Weber concertos? Yes, you are. It's going to be fine. And I think what you said was really important. You're doing what is going to make you like you're picking pieces that are feeding your musical goals. You're picking pieces that are feeding your musical interests and your musical passions, which is what everybody should be doing. Like, who cares? Who cares?
And I mean, it all goes back to the initial statement, like practicing when unmotivated. Like, why am I never unmotivated by the pieces I play? It's because I'm not trying to please other people on the repertoire of my picking. Like, I'm not picking to play Weber, Mozart, Brahms, and whoever else in a recital program because I know so and so will be making sure that I've performed them at least once in my grad. No, no. Like I said, it's pieces that I like. So therefore, I find joy in it. If you do things you like, I promise you it will make things so much easier to get back into the swing of things. So it's just very
Sure.
repertoire is very important. Like as you can see, we talked about it quite a bit.
We've got lots to say about that, for sure. I think this goes really well into the next question, which is how to just keep doing your best and not compare yourself to others. Because I feel like, it's really easy to compare ourselves to others, especially when we hear people saying, oh, you haven't played this? Well, I'm playing this. And you're like, oh no, is their repertoire better than mine? Are they a better musician than me? Well, they must be if my teacher picked this for them and not for me. What do you have to say about that, Alex?
I'm just laughing because that's all I have to say to it. Like honestly speaking, like I am, I am like the black cat in music school where I have like the opposite takes on most of the kids I'm usually surrounded by. Like I would say our take on just being ourselves is the abnormal. Like that's the taboo. Like you should be wanting to be like everybody else when you're in music school is what I feel like most people think and how they try to operate. But I am a very individualistic person. Took me 3 tries, but we got there. I'm a very individualist person, and I'm also, I would say, pretty independent. And I usually don't care. Those are very important things in music school. I think when you get caught up in everybody's opinions and like what they think about you and what so and so might think about so and so and what so and so thinks about you, like it's always what they think about you. And if you start worrying about that, you have too much going on your mind. Like I am concerned about what I need to eat for lunch. Be concerned about the repertoire that I'm playing in my recital. Or like back to the whole graduate school thing, because it is graduate season. Like the whole, what schools did you get into? And I don't care what anybody tells me. Everybody acts that to be nosy. Like you can't convince me otherwise. You cannot. Everybody just wants to know your business and it's not your business. Like if you know my business, then you have the opportunity to compare me to someone else that you know got into that institution. When you lack information, you lack opportunity to do that. So I hold the power wheel on my end. And that's just where I stand with everything music school related. It's just be private, be yourself, and be true to you. Like, don't try to be in the whole, like, I want to fit in to hang out with so and so and be like so and so and play like so and so. Like, no, Like you could be inspired by people, but you don't have to be them. So
Totally. Totally, totally. Yeah. When you lack information, you lack power. And so the people who are super nosy are just trying to get the upper hand. So, like, don't be one of those people. You don't need the upper hand. If you are a kind and courteous person, good things will come to you. I would say that, like, you're going to compare yourself no matter what. Like, as hard as we try not to, there's that little voice in our heads or in our hearts at the end of the day that is like, ooh, I think they just played that better than you. Or, ooh, you might not be as good as you think you are. But that's your inner critic, okay? Your inner critic is really useful sometimes, because without an inner critic, you wouldn't work hard for things. You wouldn't practice. You wouldn't try and get better, right? So, I mean, I think that comparison has its place with an asterisk, with like 7 asterisks, okay? Like, I think that it has its place and that it kind of drives us to be better. I don't think you should compare yourself with others because they're not on the same path as you. Their life is not your life. Their career is not your career. Their circle of friends doesn't have to be your circle of friends, right? Like, you're on your own path. So just like stay in your lane, okay? So you don't have to be trying to merge into somebody else's lane. Just stay in yours. Because like when we compare, it can kind of snowball, right? So when we allow our inner critic to just like have a say in our lives all the time, it can be really toxic and it can really suck the joy out of different experiences that we had. Don't compare yourself with others. If you're going to, just recognize it. Like, I think that it happens to us and we can't really control it. Like, I even feel that little voice sometimes too, like, oh, I think so and so is better than you at the clarinet. I'm like, yeah, well, they might be better at this thing at the clarinet, but I know that I'm pretty good at this thing on the clarinet. And even if you're not the best at something on the clarinet, there's still no reason to compare because we're all on our own journeys of growth. And so you're going to compare regardless, but just try and, like, be aware when you do it. Don't let it become part of your stream of conscience. I think that's when it becomes really dangerous, is when, like, it just becomes part of your everyday thoughts and like you aren't even recognizing that it's happening. So don't let it become part of your self-talk. Recognize when it's happening, but take a step back out of your body and be realistic. Are you doing the things that you can do that are in your control every day to be a better clarinet player? If that answer is yes, then you have no reason to compare yourself to somebody else, right? That's only going to comparing yourself is only going to make you feel more insecure. It's not going to make you feel better about yourself.
I think something that you reminded me of is another thing regarding the culture of music school. So there's like the times where you yourself are critiquing and comparing yourself, right? Like that's your inner voice. But it's taken to another level when it's verbalized amongst you and your peers, especially when your peers and yourself are comparing others to others. Now that's unhealthy and that's out of pocket. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, that should not be topics of discussions. But that creates this whole unhealthy and really negative and toxic behavior where you then start comparing yourself to other people's, but you don't compare yourself and diminish your value. You start to uplift your value and diminish others. So that's where it gets really bad, because what are you doing? Are you comparing yourself and being like, I played that better than so and so? Or are you comparing yourself saying, I don't really like how I played that, but so and so might have played it better, so maybe I should do better next time. Like, if it's a comparison where you're just being real with yourself for a moment, like not beating yourself down, it's okay. Like that, like Hannah said, is normal. But don't be comparing yourself like verbally out loud, like to diminish others. Like that's not okay. But I think this all ties into what I would call, like, not to stereotype, but it's the music scene of music school where sometimes we're not the most independent person. Like, I would say music school is very cliquey. Like, you always feel validated in groups. Like, rarely do you see people sitting by themselves because it feels very uncomfortable. And I was talking to one of my peers the other day, like, I think it stems from the whole like American high school experience where there's like these categories: the band kids, the theater kids, the athletes, the nerds, the, I don't know what they are, but there's more groups to happen. But these groups are very much seen in a music school. We have at ASU a MDT, music, dance, and theater school. So all of us are in one space. The theater kids are always there. The music kids are spread out, but now you have the subsets. You have the upper undergrads who think they're so cool. You have the upper graduate students who think they're so cool, but they're the brass students. You have the upper graduate students who think they're so cool, but they're the woodwinds. You have the up, like there's groups. There's so many groups. Like if you could stand by yourself and be confident in yourself, that is the way to go, like honestly speaking. But it's very hard because that is the abnormal for most people in a music school from my perspective. Like for me, I would say usually if you see me, I'm by myself. Like honestly speaking, I'm by myself. I have my friends that I hail here and there, then we keep pushing. Once or twice, you'll see me with someone walking to a class, walking to a rehearsal, but most of the time I'm by myself. But it's because I'm very content with being by myself. Not a lot of people can do that. But that ties into the whole thing, like just doing your best. Like that translates into your music. If you only care about you for a second, it actually is a really cool experience. Like, don't worry about what other people are doing, comparing yourself to them, trying to validate your experience, or like vice versa. Like just worry about you. I think that's very important, just being an
Absolutely.
independent person. So
And you said about doing your best. And just remember, guys, that like only you can define what your best looks like. And your best is going to look different every single day. For example, my best today was picking up my bass clarinet and tackling like 2 little runs in this piece that I have for Wind Symphony. Okay. That's my best today because the last 10 days I've been at TMEA and I've had a concert or a like 3-hour rehearsal every single day for the last 10 days. So my best today was 30 minutes on my horn before I got on to do this podcast. That's my best. I did it. I did my best today. Your teacher cannot define your best. They can help you question your best, whether your best is realistic. I think that's what a great teacher does. But your friends can't define your best. Your colleagues cannot define your best. Only you can. Only you can know where that threshold is. And it's your job to do it every day, even if your best is taking a rest day, even if your best is doing a 30-minute warm up and calling it a day, you know?
I
And
agree.
that and that's that.
Yep. Hot takes.
I
Bye.
was I was looking at our questions and I feel like we kind of touched on everything in our talk about repertoire and our talk about time management and
Oh
practice
yeah, I just look.
motivation.
There's one question on tips on memorization if you want to go into that. Only you've really memorized. I've never memorized.
Okay, guys, I feel very grateful because I'm a good memorizer. I did theater as a kid, and so I've been memorizing lines for like years. And so memorizing is just something that I've always found to be really fun. But things that helped me make memorizing easier were mental practice. So I spent a lot of time whenever I was memorizing for our competitions at Messiah. I would spend a lot of time listening to my piece and envisioning the music. I don't have a photographic memory, but I kind of have like a scrolling score in my head whenever I play Memorize, and I can kind of like see where the notes travel and stuff like that. So practicing away from my instrument was really valuable in helping me solidify that. I would listen to, like, for example, the opening line of the Poulenc, ba ba da ba dum, and I would be like, okay, what are those notes? F sharp, G, A sharp, G, C sharp. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And then I would look at my music. Oh yeah, that is what it is. All right. And so I would kind of tackle it that way. Another thing that helps me memorize is I went through, I did this for Rigoletto actually, and I, put descriptor words for each section since there's such strong sections in that piece. So I would say like, oh, this is the theme from Caro Nome. And then this is a theme from Caro Nome, but it's the noodly theme because it's got all the running 16ths in it. And then this is the jumpy theme from Caro Nome. So then when I would listen to Rigoletto, I would be like, okay, Caro Nome theme. Oh, here's the noodly part. And then, oh, it's bayum, ba-bum, bayum, ba-bum, bayum. We're at the jumpy part, right? So giving yourself kind of little reminders like that. Score study was really helpful to me. So not that you have to have your pianist's part memorized, but if you can become like audibly familiar with your pianist's part, then hearing where they're going and picking and like audiating how your part fits with that is really helpful. So like looking at the piano part, can you sing your part? Can you, even if you're not a beautiful singer, can you at least hear your part in your head while you're looking at the piano score? That was really helpful to me as well. Who has really good tips on memorization? Noah Kayagama. Have you guys heard of him? Dr. Noah Kayagama. He's the bulletproof musician guy. If you've heard of his website, if you haven't, totally check him out. Bulletproofmusician.com. He's got tons of resources for memorizing stuff, for building better practice habits, for managing your performance anxiety, which I have really benefited from. So yeah, those are kind of the three things that I did when I was actively memorizing a piece. But if you are looking for better advice in a more compact package, definitely go to his website and you will find a treasure trove of tips and tricks.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We have one more question on the other slide we posted. We could decide if we want to answer it or not. It was what were your favorite and least favorite parts of music?
Oh, we also got asked if we named our reads, which I don't, because they're traitors. They don't deserve names.
I should.
You were gonna name them. Mine are traitors. I'm not gonna name them. They don't deserve names.
The Nameless Canes.
Nameless Canes. Sometimes I feel like a restaurant because I feel like all I do is I raise canes. That's all I do for my life. I try and get them to health and then they just die.
No, but I thought that was an interesting question. So do you want to answer it? Do we want to answer it? We could talk about undergrad. We don't have to talk about grad. Because you're not technically done with your grad experience.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know what my favorite and least favorite parts are. My favorite and least favorite parts of undergrad are the same. I loved all the opportunities I got at Messiah. I was so thankful for all the opportunities I got. My least favorite part was having to have all of those opportunities on my plate because Alex and I went to a really small school. There weren't very many people to draw from. And so when you were a person who worked hard and was willing to take on a lot of leadership responsibilities, you often ended up with a much fuller plate and a much heavier burden than everybody else. And so while that was really good because it gave me tough skin, it gave me a lot of really awesome performance experiences that I wouldn't have gotten anywhere else, it was really hard to deal with and was a big source of stress in my undergrad. But at the end of the day, I am really thankful for it. It just wasn't easy. It wasn't easy going through it. But now standing here, I can be really thankful for it. And I can see all of the ways that helped me grow. So that's my answer. What was your favorite and least favorite part of undergrad?
My favorite part, I think, and I said this on a different podcast, but Messiah's community is very different. Like the relationships you have with professors, like you don't get that everywhere. Like we're very cool with our professors. They're very understanding and approachable. Like you don't fear approaching a Messiah music professor or like for me even a business professor or our gen ed professors. Like they're very approachable. They help you if you need help. Like it's no big obstacle you have to cross. And I think in comparison to graduate school, like yes, that still kind of exists, but I go to a mega school and Hannah might experience this later on when she needs certain things, but it's much more difficult to do things. I think my least favorite part, oh, I don't know, like in a joking way, my least favorite was the winter. Like it's very cold in Pennsylvania, but I don't know what my least favorite part is. Like I would,
Do you think the drama was worse at Messiah than at a state school? Because Messiah is a religious institution. So because there was like that religious factor, I feel like whenever there was drama, it got super personal because everybody was air quotes supposed to be a Christian there. And whenever drama happens, like it was just really catty and really personal because people were like, well, you're a Christian and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
like if I was thinking like an Alex real response, like my least favorite part had to like my favorite and least favorite part could both be the people. Like I love the people I met there, but there were certain people I met there and I'm just like, what was that? Like because it's this whole like Christian thing. It's like, oh, I'm a better Christian than you, but I could talk mad foolishness about you and I could still tell Jesus that I'm sorry and he's going to forgive me and I could still treat you like trash whenever I want, but then I could say sorry and everything's going to be okay because we're a Christian. And it's like, huh? But also I think, I don't know, it was weird. I think the music school at Messiah, at least when I was there, was very interesting because I'm still the same where I stay to myself for the most part and it's very cliquey. Like I don't even know what it's like. I don't know anybody still at Messiah in the music school, but it was very clicky, and I just never fit into that. And I wouldn't say that was my least favorite part, but that's one negative thing that stood out to me. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
But my second favorite part of undergrad was getting to play with you, which is how Venn Duo was born. Yay!
No, but that's what I mean. Like the opportunities, obviously, yes, I had great opportunities, but it's the people I met there too. I talk to my friends all the time, and like I'm a Christian, Hannah is also a Christian, but it's a space where we all felt like we could be open about our religion. And it really wasn't like a topic of discussion, but rather you meet people who have similar morals and ethics as you when in a good situation. So I
Yeah.
think that's what I really liked about my experience in undergrad. It's like being around like-minded people and not really having to be like, well, I like this. I don't really do that. Like I never had to say those things, but being at a state school, I do. I have to be like, yeah, I don't do that. Or yeah, I don't do that. And then people might look at me like, oh, she thinks she's too good. I'm like, no, it's a personal choice. I just don't do certain things.
Yeah.
So yeah. What other tips do you have for music majors? Like before we end, if are there any random tips that come to mind that you really want to say?
Don't sleep on your theory and your oral skills classes. Those are so real. I know that 8 a.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays is not the time that you care about a Neapolitan chord, but it's real. You need to know it. And you need to be able to sight read, and you need to be able to sing just a little bit, not a lot, just a little. Those things are totally real, so don't blow them off. And the other thing that I would say is take care of yourself. Yeah, I wasn't always good at that. I was a person who took a lot of pride in working hard, so much so that I was willing to sacrifice my own well-being for the sake of music, and that's not healthy. And I know that now. And now being a curmudgeony old lady in my 20s and in my graduate work, I take care of myself first. I'm like, oh, if she's not good, then the music is not going to be good either. So she's got to be good. So you take care of yourself, guys. What about you?
I mean, I think the second one you said was really important. It's like take care of yourself. Like that's what I mean. Like in undergrad, I never fit in. And it's because I take care of myself and I don't live in a music department. Like my music department is not where I pay rent. I
Spend
would
some
go
time
home
at your
and relax. But like in undergrad, I don't know if it's just I don't even think it's like something that I was raised doing because I was a very busy child. Like I was very like I had ballet 3 days a week. And on the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so also 3 days a week, I had music. And sometimes I had ballet and then I had music until 9 p.m. This is me in high school. And for us, high school is from 7th to 12th grade. So it was a lot. And at one point, I really had to stop and break my load. So I think high school is really the time where I was just doing a lot. So being in college, like at least from the education system that I had growing up, college was so easy. Like, I don't know a person from the Bahamas who has ever gone to college and is like, this is so hard. Like, we have so much free time, so much less classes that we were used to from our high school experience that I just had time and I had time to relax. So that's really where my process of self care and relaxation started. Like, I remember, and this is going to sound so bad, but I still do this to this day. In undergrad, my freshman year, I legitimately, we had those sofas in High Center, Hannah. I would fall asleep on them like midday, just take a nap while people were walking by. I didn't care. I just fell asleep and I was like, nap time, wake up for rehearsal. And even in graduate school, like I would come home from rehearsals. We finish at like what time? Like 2, 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I come home, take a nap, I wake up, and then I start doing my homework. But that's just how I operate and how I take care of myself, making sure that my brain is doing its thing, like making sure it's rested. Also, eating is very important. That's something that musicians try to brag about how little they eat. Not cool, not cool at all. So I always took care of myself, and I think that's very important because it's this weird thing coming into undergrad, especially like a UNT or ASU, where the undergrads and the graduate students are together. like there's always this thing where the undergrads feel like they have to be as good as the graduate students, but they don't realize that we have 4 years of training on them. So there's no need for comparison because you will get there, but it is a process. I think something else that I would tell music majors is music theory is important. But for those of us that don't like music theory, do well in undergrad. But
like music theory. Let me just put that out there. I just have realized now in life that it's important. You don't have to like it, you just have to know it.
Yeah. And then something that you should know, like in graduate school, not all theory classes are like analytical theory. So there's light at the end of the tunnel if you do well enough in undergrad to make it through.
That's really encouraging. Thanks for reminding us of that, Alex.
Oh, and something else. I don't know. For me personally, I don't know why I just thought of this, but practice rooms, chaos. In music school, they're chaos. Like you could barely get one. So practicing in an apartment is great if your apartment allows it. I know Hannah had a little situation, but
It's resolved.
It's resolved. Great. But practicing in your apartment, like what's wrong with that?
Nothing. It's better, guys. It's 100% better.
Like my clarinet, this is the E flat, not mine, the school's, but like it's just sitting here. But then 2 hours later, I'm probably going to pick it up, practice again, put it back down. And I could just do what I want in the space that I want and not feel like I have to sit down for 4 hours and do one session and one session only. Like there's this thing called practicing in increments. It's really cool.
You all should look up interleaving practice. It's a type of practicing. It's on Bulletproof Musician, and it's proven to be the most effective technique for practicing. Basically, you practice one thing for 10 minutes, practice another thing for 10 minutes, go back to the first thing for 10 minutes, and then go back to the second thing for 10 minutes, and you like intersperse it, and it's proven to have better retention. Look it up if you're interested.
But yeah, those are the things I would say to any music majors. Like I can't think of any other specifics that we haven't talked about on a pod already.
Yeah. No, that's all solid advice. Well, thank you guys so much for your questions. It was great to hear what was on your minds. And it's always so good to share with you our experiences and the things that we have been through together and at our own schools and our own experiences. So thank you guys so much for writing in, for tuning in. We're so grateful for you. And we're really excited about the stuff that we have coming up to share with you on social media, music projects, TikToks, and of course, more Venn Pod. This has been the Venn Pod.
Session over.